Just stepped off the plane, ladies and gentlemen. Just got back from Kansas City. We have a lot to talk about. We have some massive updates that we need to get through with these rankings. Now, fair warning, okay? These are my initial reactions. Like I said, we just stepped off the plane here. I'm going to be in the lab. I'm going to be tinkering with these rankings, tinkering these guys, probably over the next, I want to say 3 weeks, every single day. So, of course, all of our updated rankings as we go through and make adjustments can be found on flockfantasy.com. Not only my Dynasty rankings, but also the Dynasty rankings of all your favorite content creators. Get all of that plus exclusive articles, videos, live streams. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you're also going to get 30% off any subscription, and yours truly will go through and make a podcast breaking down your Dynasty team. So take advantage of that. You can find the link in the comment section as well as the description. But I don't want to waste your time here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go tier one. Let's start it off. Bijan Robinson. Nothing changes. The Atlanta Falcons situation, yeah, it's not a good offense, but it's still a good landing spot, okay? This wasn't a good offense last year when Tyler Algier at points was a league-winning running back down the stretch, okay? The man won you playoff weeks on his own, and the reason for this is simple. Arthur Smith wants to be the run-heaviest offense in the entire NFL, and he is proving that to us by going through and taking Atlanta's Derrick Henry, by going through and taking Bijan Robinson. Now, of course, Bijan Robinson isn't exactly Derrick Henry. One, he can catch the ball, which is very nice. And it's not that Bijan Robinson can catch the ball in terms of, oh, the pocket collapses, we need to dump it off so we don't get stacked. No, Bijan Robinson runs routes. He is a good receiver, okay? So don't underestimate him in that PPR format where you could end up seeing the 45 receptions out of the backfield. Also, I will say I've never been able to interview Derrick Henry, and obviously we have with Bijan Robinson. Okay, let me flex on y'all with that one. So in all honesty, I'm just going to be so damn biased with Bijan Robinson through the rest of his NFL career. I'll probably rank him a little too high every single year. Right now, I have him as the 9th overall player in our 12-team Superflex startups. But going down to our next tier, I know that there are a lot of people saying Mason in Superflex, it is going to be Anthony Richardson. And I understand the thought process there, right? I mean, if you're pulling up Anthony Richardson's profile, say quarterback that goes to a phenomenal situation for what you want to see. This is a coaching staff that we've seen in years past be able to go through and be able to develop quarterbacks. And on top of this, with Anthony Richardson, you have the rushing production to provide real fantasy football upside. I mean, this is a quarterback that doesn't start till his junior season at Florida, so he's maybe a little bit more raw. Maybe you actually don't see Anthony Richardson as a starting quarterback until maybe week 6, week 7, week 8, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it doesn't really matter. This is a quarterback that back in 2021, 7 games, the man had over 400 rushing yards in 7 games where sacks are counted as negative rushing yardage. So I understand the thought process there with Anthony Richardson at 2. I can't do it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Bryce Young instead. If I'm looking at Bryce Young, this is a quarterback that goes #1 overall in the NFL draft, is a phenomenal player top to bottom. NFL teams, NFL talent evaluators tell us that he is that guy. He is the franchise QB. He's not an off-the-field distraction such as a Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel. I think you just have such a high floor with the Bryce Young, or maybe we don't have the same level of floor with Anthony Richardson, which is why whenever we go through and tinker with our one quarterback dynasty rankings, you will actually see that probably in one quarterback leagues, I'd prefer the rushing upside of an Anthony Richardson, whereas in a Superflex format, I'd prefer the security that you get with the Bryce Young. Also, I mean, come on. We got to talk to Bryce Young. We got to interview Bryce Young. Going over to our next guy, we are going to have CJ Stroud at 4. I mean, with Stroud going over to the Houston Texans, maybe you kind of make the argument that the Texans were set up to be in a phenomenal position over the next few years. They trade away their 2024 first to go get Will Anderson. So you're a little less excited thinking, no, well, maybe they could get Marvin Harrison Jr. next year. No, it's not happening. CJ Stroud doesn't have a great supporting cast. Obviously, neither does Bryce Young, but NFL talent evaluators tell us Young is the guy. Stroud is too. And keep in mind, Stroud just doesn't have the same level of rushing upside as Anthony Richardson. And honestly, based off the move the Houston Texans made to go get Will Anderson, I kind of don't like the Houston Texans landing spot as much just because they paid so much of their additional future draft capital. Now, going over to our third tier here, we are going to look at two players neck and neck. And I think it is going to be very dependent on the format that you have between Jackson Smith-Njigba as well as Jamir Gibbs. Now, I am personally ranking Jackson Smith-Njigba at 5. Now, I want to look at where we can target each individual player. If you want to tell me, Mason, you know what, man, I'm only in a 10-team league. We only really start 8 to 9 guys. I will always be able to find a wide receiver to go through and put my starting lineup. I mean, it's so easy to go out there and add in a depth level wide receiver like Deontay Johnson, like Elijah Moore, like Rashad Bateman. I can always go ahead and make that move. Running backs with true upside, our league is going to put a premium on that prototype. Sure, go ahead and take Jamir Gibbs there, because if you are looking at Jamir Gibbs, you have Swift out. Gibbs is going behind an elite offensive line. Gibbs was an elite passing down running back. Gibbs is an elite athlete, and he is picked 12 overall. If we look at just those traits, Jamir Gibbs could score out as a truly generational running back for us. I mean, if we just looked at those traits, DeAndre Swift could be up there with like the Todd Gurley, Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott's range of running backs. Now, of course, the reason Jamir Gibbs does not score in that range, and the reason he's down here in tier 3 rather than tier 1, such as Bijan Robinson, is you do have size concerns, right? Jamir Gibbs doesn't profile to be a running back that's going to see a 3-down workload. He profiles to be like Alvin Kamara. He profiles to be like Aaron Jones. I'm more confident in projecting him to be that now that he does get pick 12 overall draft capital. I think the Detroit Lions are going to do everything they can to make sure that that works out. So while Jamir Gibbs is moving up my overall startup rankings, where I recently moved him up to 34 overall in our startup rankings, these are borderline running back 5, running back 6 overall in Dynasty. You still have Montgomery there. Montgomery will still see touches. And like we said, Gibbs doesn't profile to be a true 3-down workhorse. Now, Jackson Smith-Njigba will be at 5 for me if we are playing in a league where you have a deeper starting lineup, where you can go through and you can start up to 5, 6 wide receivers with both your wide receiver slots and your flexes. With Jackson Smith-Njigba, this is a wide receiver that in our model, because he breaks out as a sophomore in the same offense as Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emike Ibuka, who also is going to be a top 10 NFL draft pick. He is one of the highest scorers that we have, I mean, pretty much ever here if we're going to look at JSN. Jackson Smith-Njigba scores a 42, which is in line with Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins. I know Sammy Watkins looks gross here now, but you don't remember Sammy Watkins coming in out of Clemson. Sammy Watkins was unbelievable. Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Those are the only players that we've had score over a 40 before in our wide receiver prospect model. He goes to a situation with the Seattle Seahawks where he has the draft capital. Not only does he have the draft capital, but he is a perfect long-term complement to DK Metcalf. I think year one may be a little bit gross because the passing volume is going to be a little capped in Seattle, of course. And keep in mind, you are going to look at Tyler Lockett still as an option that can draw targets on his own right. But if we were talking long-term here, long-term, Lockett's not going to be there in 2024. Long-term, it is just going to be Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba. And this is a team that possibly just maybe can find a way to get a better quarterback than Geno Smith. I just love the player. We're going to have to go ahead. We're going to have to take him here. Now, going over to our next tier, it's going to also be a tier 2 guys. I mean, we're just having tier 2 guys, tier 2 guys, tier 2 guys. We're going Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison back-to-back. Johnston is going to be my preference. Now, both of these guys check the main boxes that we look for. There are 4 primary boxes that we want to see with our wide receivers. We've proven this historically. If you have not had the chance, go check out our in-depth historical research and analysis video of rookie wide receivers we put out right before the NFL draft. We've proven our model historically and shown it everything laid out. What matters are these 4 boxes. Breaking out early on, dominating as a sophomore, declaring as a junior, and getting NFL draft capital. Both Quentin Johnston as well as Jordan Addison check those 4 boxes. They both break out as freshmen. They both dominate as sophomores. They both declare as juniors. They both go round 1 of the NFL draft. Now, the reason I'm going to have Quentin Johnston slightly ahead of Jordan Addison, and I mean they are right there. Like right now, if you look at my rankings, in startup drafts, I have Quentin Johnston at 50. I have Jordan Addison at 51. They are neck and neck for me. I love both landing spots. But if we're looking at the size red flag that we have with Jordan Addison, historically speaking, at this weight, you either are Devonta Smith or you are a speedy wide receiver that is going to win with his verticality, such as a Deshaun Jackson or a John Brown, rather than a prototypical wide receiver. Now, of course, this doesn't mean we can't draft Jordan Addison just because he looks like he's an outlier with his size, because the NFL is changing. And also, it's going to be a limited sample that we're operating with that may cause Jordan Addison to look a little bit more like an outlier than he truly is, right? So it's not the end of the world. Addison is still an incredibly strong player. But because we don't have that same red flag with Quentin Johnston, I am personally going to go ahead and I'm going to take Johnston ahead of him, especially when, while both situations are great, Johnston's just better in my mind. Now, going down to our next tier, we're going to be looking at 2 more guys here. And I know most people will be higher on Zay Flowers than I am, but I think people are honestly maybe selling themselves a little too much on Zay Flowers, right? Now, he does check some of the boxes we look for. With Zay Flowers, he doesn't break out as a freshman, but he breaks out as a sophomore. He dominates as a junior, and he improves every season. Now, the primary issue that you're going to have with Zay Flowers in my mind is the fact that he stays all 4 years in college. If we look historically, the wide receivers that find success that stay all 4 years in college are guys that have to play in top level offenses alongside the best wide receivers in college football. It's the Alabama guys with Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle playing next to Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. It's the Ohio State guys. It's Chris Olave having to play next to Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr. It's, staying at Ohio State, going way back in the day and looking at Terry McLaurin being stuck in an offense with Paris Campbell and just so many talented guys in that Ohio State wide receiver room. Historically speaking, that is when you can give the benefit of the doubt for a player staying for a 4th season and ignore the historical hit rate and how that is impacted by a 4th season. You don't have that excuse with Zay Flowers. Now, keep in mind, he still has very strong traits on his profile. He still gets the capital we're looking for. But I think when we're looking at that one massive red flag, and at the same time, he has a worse landing spot than Johnston Addison, in my mind, he can't be in the same tier. I just can't do it. We are going to have Zack Chardonnay in this tier as well. This is a statement ranking here, okay? Because you're not going to have to take Zack Chardonnay with this pick. I can almost guarantee you, you will see Zack Chardonnay falling to the 2nd round of some of your rookie drafts. With Chardonnay, we've already had some crazy questions. Y'all know I'm a Roshan Johnson fan, but we've already had people coming out and asking if we can take Roshan Johnson over Zack Chardonnay. While yes, it is the worst landing spot imaginable going to the Seattle Seahawks, you have Kenneth Walker there. At the end of the day, if we were looking at our primary boxes, the man has the size to be a 3-down back. He's athletic enough at the running back position. He was a great pass catcher in college. And now he goes round 2 in the NFL draft. While the situation is garbage, Zack Chardonnay is still a phenomenal prospect. In my mind, he was a much better prospect than Zay Flowers. Now, of course, they play 2 different positions. And I'm willing to move Zack Chardonnay to the bottom of his tier, given the horrible landing spot. But historically speaking, if you're going through and vaulting up a day 3 running back because you like the situation a little bit more, it's a very bad call. Historically speaking, it's almost one of the worst things that you can look to do. Now, dropping down a tier here, I don't know. We're going to have Levis at 11, right? Now, with Will Levis, this is a quarterback that I was advocating to draft way higher than this in Dynasty rookie drafts. Whenever Las Vegas sportsbooks had it priced in as Will Levis minus 500 to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. We were looking at Levis going, okay, if he goes number 2 overall to the Houston Texans, the level of job security that he has, he's guaranteed to be a starter for 3 to 4 years, even if he's bad. He has rushing upside. That means that if he has the job security, rushing upside, and an NFL team believes in him, I'm all in. Because he falls to round 2 of the NFL draft, he has to plummet down dynasty rankings. Like, I moved Will Levis in terms of our startup rankings down maybe about 60 spots, 5 rounds in a startup draft. And honestly, I may move him down a little bit more. Moved him down to pick 104. He's now the 11th rookie off the board. Couple things. 1, the rushing upside's still there. 2, the Titans clearly don't believe in Tannehill. If Levis were to step in and find success, he's a quarterback with upside. Now, the main issue is when you go in round 2, unlike when you go top 5 of the NFL draft, the second that you fail, it's bye forever. The second that you fail, you're not getting that second shot. You're not going to start for another season. Look at Malik Willis, the perfect example of what happened last year. The second that he failed, what happened with Malik Willis? They go through, they cast him to the back, and they say, Will Levis is our guy. So that is in the range of outcomes now for Will Levis, where it previously wasn't. Now, we did get the chance to interview Will Levis, and he went out of his way to give us the best interview possible. Like, I love the man. I am rooting for him. I'm probably going to order his jersey. Just historically speaking, it's not good here if you have a quarterback falling to round 2. Now, 12, we're going to go Devonta Chain, right? I'm having a difficult time with this one. Because if we're looking at Devonta Chain, this is a running back that coming in, we knew he was probably going to get the draft capital. We knew he was probably going to go ahead of Roshan Johnson because of his speed, because of his receiving down skill set. But we said, you know what? It doesn't matter if he gets the draft capital ahead of those guys. I mean, he's so small, less than 180 pounds. Regardless of the capital, we're probably going to be fading him. Well, he does go ahead of him like we were expecting, but he also finds the best landing spot pretty much imaginable. He goes over to the Miami Dolphins, a team that right now is 31-year-old Raheem Mostert as the starter. 31-year-old Raheem Mostert has seen 1 game in his entire NFL career with 20 or more carries. So A-Chain finds himself in the best spot where I feel like we may want to go through and take him here. Now, our next guy will be Roshan Johnson. Now, with Roshan, I honestly, by the time this video is out, if you head over to flockfantasy.com, could have him ahead of Devonta Chain. He goes over to Chicago. The issue with the Chicago Bears is obviously, A, this offense is probably not going to be that good. B, Justin Fields himself is going to be stealing a decent amount of the rushing touchdowns and what we are going to have here. On top of this, given the fact that Justin Fields can run the ball, you're not getting targets out of the backfield. Now, Roshan Johnson could still easily be the starter here. I would imagine it's going to be Khalil Herbert for the beginning of the season. Long term, however, I do think that Roshan Johnson has a shot to be that guy. I think his ceiling for fantasy football purposes, given the fact that he has the size, which Devonta Chain does not, I want to say that he has a higher ceiling. I'm going to be going back and forth with this. You could see at some point this week, Roshan Johnson jumping Devonta Chain in our rankings. Now, our next guy, dropping down a tier, will be Rashod Rice. With Rice, no, he's not that good of a wide receiver prospect. He actually has a similar profile to Zay Flowers, if we're going to be honest. Whereas he breaks out as a sophomore, has to stay all 4 years to finally be dominant. Now, Zay Flowers had a better junior season than Rashod Rice did. Rashod Rice was really more so just used on screens, more so used out in the flat. So not a wide receiver that is particularly that good. But nobody in this second round is particularly that good, if we're going to be honest with each other. Josh Downs would be a way better player, right? But Josh Downs isn't going to play with Patrick Mahomes. Josh Downs isn't going to the worst wide receiver core in the NFL. So with Rice, I know this is aggressive with us ranking him. Here, years past, I'm not doing it, right? Years past, I'm saying he's such a bad prospect. No, we're not putting him at the beginning of the second round. This more so goes to speak about how bad this year's overall draft is rather than how good Rashod Rice is in general. Now, going down to our next guy, we're going to be looking at Dalton Kincaid at 15. With Dalton Kincaid, I mean, you have the dream landing spot going to the Buffalo Bills. And I think, honestly, we're putting him ahead of Rice. I can't do it. We're going to go ahead. We're going to put Dalton Kincaid over Rashod Rice. So Kincaid will be at 14, Rice at 15, because Kincaid is a first-round drafted tight end. He is a better prospect than Rice is, and he finds arguably just as good of a landing spot, right? I mean, with Kincaid, he could be the number 2 overall pass catcher for the Buffalo Bills here. It could just be a much better version of Dawson Knox, which is extremely valuable from a fantasy football perspective. Now, going down to our next guy, we're going to be looking at Kendre Miller here at 16, a running back that I wasn't a big fan of coming in, right? But I can't ignore the capital that he gets. At the same time, I can't ignore the landing spot. It's a really good situation in general. You have Jamal Williams, Kamara, probably guaranteed this next season. But then after that, this depth chart's wide open. He has the size to be a 3-down player. Now, he's just not good at catching the ball. Now, if you were playing in a non-PPR format, I'd be willing to move Kendre Miller up a little bit from here. We moved him up to pick 118 overall in startup draft. So we're definitely a little bit higher on him than we were. I mean, a lot higher on him than we were. Now, going down to our next guy, we are going to be looking at Josh Downs, a wide receiver that I'm very excited about for NFL purposes, right? I think he's going to go over to Indianapolis and be a great fit playing alongside Michael Pittman. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, I don't think we have a shot to ever be the wide receiver 1 there in Indianapolis. I think that's going to be locked and loaded Michael Pittman Jr., even if I'm not a big Michael Pittman Jr. fan. Not only will that be locked and loaded Michael Pittman Jr., but at the same time, this will be a rush first offense with Jonathan Taylor, and Anthony Richardson is going to be that deep ball thrower. I don't necessarily know how many checkdowns we're going to be getting. Anthony Richardson himself, the reason you're excited in fantasy football is given the rushing upside, not necessarily the passing volume we're expecting in Indianapolis. So I think it's a really good real-life fit for Josh Downs. I just don't necessarily know what we think about it from a fantasy football pick. Now, going over to our next guy, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take Michael Mayer here. With Michael Mayer, this is a tight end that was the number 1 guy in this class for quite some time at the position. He goes to a situation that I honestly kind of like. I mean, I think this is a sneaky good landing spot. Goes in the 2nd round as well. So this is a very similar situation to what we have with Roshan Johnson, where I could easily see Roshan Johnson moving up these rankings tomorrow. I could easily see Michael Mayer moving up these rankings tomorrow. If you were playing in a tight end premium format, I'd definitely be willing to jump him up to like 12, 13, if I'm going to be honest. Obviously, we would jump Dalton Kincaid up as well, but these are going to be rankings that are non-tight end premium. Now, again, thank you so much for checking this out. I really hope that you got something from it. And as always, go down there, drop that like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And if you want to get access to our constantly updated Dynasty rankings, if you want to get access to exclusive content, if you want your Dynasty team broken down in a podcast by yours truly, you can find the link in the comment section. You can find it in the description. Promo code FLOCK, 30% off any subscription. And also, that's how you're going to get your team broken down in a podcast by yours truly again. But thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate you and really hope you have a great day.